Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Ray Blakney. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting Life Unscripted. I'm so grateful to have you here this wonderful Saturday afternoon. We're going to talk about the lessons learned from surviving and thriving through not just one, but two pandemics. People are listening and going, what? Did we have a second COVID? We lost? No, but you're going to share all of those wonderful details. You have started a very amazing company helping people learn languages live. How do you call it? Lingua?
Livelingua.com, right?
Live Lingua. I like that. Is Lingua kind of from Spanish?
Yeah, you would think so, right? But actually, I don't think very long about my business name. So that was actually the Latin word for tongue and language. And that's what I did it. The domain was available 16 years ago when I launched, 15, I guess. And that's how the name came about.
That's awesome. Well, let's get started because we're going to talk about surviving and thriving two pandemics. But how did you even get started with your business? What did that look like? Share a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, so quick 30-second, I guess, elevator pitch on my backstory. I was born in the Philippines, grew up in Turkey. My dad is from the United States, but grew up in Rhodesia. I went to university in the US. I'm an American citizen. I worked as a computer engineer. I did that for about 5 years and decided, hey, I don't want to sit in a queue for the rest of my life. So I quit my job and I joined the Peace Corps. For those of you who don't know, they pay you about $100 a month. So going from a computer engineering salary to a Peace Corps salary is a pretty big salary cut. They sent me to Mexico. It's where I met my wife. We launched our first business together, which was a brick and mortar language school, which led into our second business and to date our biggest, which is an online language school called livelingua.com. I glossed over the last part because that's part of what we're going to talk about when it comes to the pandemic.
Yeah, it's interesting. What brought you into the world of language? Because your wife was doing it, so you decided to join, and start the company together because you were doing engineering and then you joined the Peace Corps. Why language as a business and teaching?
Yeah, great question. So it's not, you're right. Language education is not my specialty, even though I guess after having done it for 15 years, I'm pretty decent at it. But that's not why we got into it. My background again was computer engineering, and I always wanted to run my own business. I just didn't know what. Computer engineering in and of itself was not a business, right? Tons of programmers out there. So I met my wife, who was a teacher, and she always wanted to run a school. We were dating at the time. So we started talking about it. And like, well, we're in our mid-20s, just got out of the Peace Corps, have no kids, no other responsibilities. If we're going to try it, let's try this right now. Because worst case scenario, we're lucky to have loving parents. We go back with them. I'm a computer engineer. You're a bilingual teacher. We'll get jobs. We'll be fine, right? So that's how we got into the entrepreneurship. It was kind of everything met at the right time. And we decided to take the leap. In the marriage leap and the business leap, all within about 7 days of each other, which is a totally different story.
Wow, now that's something else that you did the two together. And you know what? Not a lot of couples do well together managing a business. So it's awesome that you've actually done well on both sides.
Yeah, well, I tell people about that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but if you do, there's only two possible outcomes: divorce or a really strong marriage. There is no middle ground if you're going to go down that route. And I'm guessing divorce is probably the more likely outcome. You have to kind of go through a lot of highs and lows. There's no quote unquote work-life separation, but you learn to deal with a lot of stress together and the hardship together. And if you go through that, pretty much, if you survive through the crucible with them, anything else that kind of comes to you in life is relatively small price.
Yeah, and you know what? It's amazing because even if you are entering into a business partnership, those often break up. So. Yeah. So this is great. So now you started your language schools and wow, we have a pandemic come about that tests you. How did that come about? Share, because people are probably thinking, wait, there's two pandemics.
I'm not that old, so we're not talking about the Spanish flu here. I'm not 120 years old.
I know.
So
it's like,
I can't quite go back that far. But okay. So I was in Mexico for the Peace Corps and I stayed in Mexico afterwards. The first business that we launched together was a language school. A brick and mortar one. So foreigners, Americans would come from the United States. They would study with us in Mexico. We'd put them in Mexican families. We were lucky. I learned something called search engine optimization at the time. So within 6 months before we launched, we were fully booked, even though we didn't actually have no experience.
Wow.
So we launched. Things were going great. 6 months into it, something called the Mexican swine flu happened. For those of you who don't remember, the Mexican swine flu was supposed to be COVID. Right? Everybody was worried that this is going to go around the world. This is going to be a global pandemic. So what did they do? They shut off the borders of Mexico. Nobody could fly in, nobody could fly out. All of our students came from outside. So all of our students left overnight.
Wow.
because they wanted to be able to get home. And then none of our new students could come in and arrive. So my wife was actually the one who had the idea. Look, we need to pay our teachers. Teachers, we pay them every week because just like in the United States, budgeting is not the greatest thing in the world, right? They get paid on Monday. By the following Monday, they actually need their other paycheck in order to pay all their bills.
Yeah.
So it was our responsibility as business owners to be able to take care of them, and we were finding it very difficult to do so. So my wife said, let's email all our previous students, see if anybody wanted to take lessons on Skype. This was a novel idea back in 2008.
Wow.
So we emailed them. Half the students said, yeah, I'd love to. Like, that's strange. So I'm a computer engineer. I threw up a website. I do want to clarify here, computer engineer is not graphic designer. So I'm the guy who makes the fancy stuff happen in the background. I say this because it means my website was really, really ugly. I mean, I physically knew how to program, but the website was really bad. This was before the days you could buy pretty looking websites yourself on for like 20
But it
bucks,
did what
right?
it had to do.
It did what it had to do. It was 5 pages big. Mobile design wasn't a thing back then because smartphones were relatively new. And so we threw it up there. I did a little bit of SEO, search engine optimization on it. I'm like, yeah, let's see if anybody signs up. So what happened was 30 days later, the swine flu just fizzled out. Nothing happened. 60 days later, our school was fully booked again. 120 days later, we were getting more students from that little dinky website I made for Spanish than we were at a brick and mortar school, and we were making more money on a side hustle than we were on our successful brick and mortar business.
Wow. So, what I love about your story is this time and age with the technology the way it is, there's people who, hey, I can't afford the brick and mortar, but there's so many opportunities with technology, and even better than when you got started. You don't need to be super techie. See, now with things ready-made and you could buy them, you can get a website up in an hour probably, and it'll be fully functional and ready for you to take in business.
You got it. Just watch a YouTube video and learn the basics of something called WordPress.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, register with a server. It installs in 1 or 2 clicks. You can go to a website, my favorite, and I'm not endorsing them in any way, but I use them all the time, is themeforest.net. They have beautiful websites there that cost between $20 and $40. You download them, you upload them onto your WordPress. You have a beautiful website. You just have to replace some of the images and put some text in there. And you can do this in a weekend, and you can launch your quote unquote online business in a weekend. There's a lot more to it than that, but kind of getting started is very, very easy these days.
Yeah. So what was the biggest lesson you learned through the first pandemic, the swine flu, and then realizing, boom, here is this opportunity we didn't know about? What at the other end of the pandemic, what did you get from all of it? What was your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway, and this is hindsight 2020, right? Because if you'd asked me back then, I was new to entrepreneurship. I didn't really know what I was doing. Is ask yourself why you are building your business before you build the business. So the reason I say that is, again, we had the brick and mortar school and it was successful. As successful as brick and mortar businesses can be. Your scale is going to be a lot smaller if you're brick and mortar, unless you go into franchising, and there's a whole bunch of other things there. But generally speaking, you make $50,000 to $150,000 in profit a year in your brick and mortar business, you're considered to be doing pretty well in your business. And so we were doing that, but I didn't have a day off for 90 days in the summer. We're a school business, right? Because everybody comes to the summer breaks, working to the bone. And I had been taught as a kid that you work hard for 40 years and then you can retire and enjoy your life. Yeah. I love my parents. That's what they did. It worked out for them. But the world has other options right now. So when we moved into the online world, suddenly we were making that much and more working 1 or 2 hours a day. And that was kind of when I had to start doing a mental flip of, wait, what am I doing? Why was I working so hard before? Why am I in this new business now? Why am I doing this? Once you get past, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, rent and food was paid for. I live in Mexico, right? $100,000 is decent in the United States. In Mexico, it's great. And so I had to really figure out why I was working. And that's kind of was probably a little esoteric, but it's kind of the lesson that I took away from the first one.
Yeah.
I was going down the wrong path. We might be miserable. I might be divorced if we would still been running that business 15 years down the road.
Yeah.
So that's something that I wish I had done before, and I'd love to share it with your audience, and maybe hopefully some of them will do it before they launch their business. Make sure the business is taking you where you really want to go, instead of taking where other people tell you should be going.
I love that you say that, Ray, because so many people say, why do you want to build a business? Well, I just want to be self-sufficient, away from a job, and make good money. Well, is that a big enough why? And what are you doing to serve the community? Like, what is your service that you're bringing to the community? And do people really want it, need it, or desire it? Because one thing I found, I wanted to bring lessons, teach people how to do their accounting. And, when I got to the nitty gritty of it, people are like, no, I want you to do it. Take it and do it for me. I don't want to be concerned with it. I don't want to get an MBA. I want you to do it.
You bring up a great point, Christina. Actually, and the timing of this interview is great. So I just got back from probably the most amazing entrepreneur retreat in my life about 3 days ago. I'm kind of embarrassed to even say it. So I got invited to hang out with Richard Branson on Necker Island. So I just was hanging out, like 3 days ago, I was hanging out with him there, along with a Nobel laureate, President Sirleaf, the CEO of X, which is like the moonshot factory of Google. So these really, really amazing, inspiring people from around the world. And the one thing that I took away from that, when I was sitting there, just pure luck, the first night at dinner, I sat down and all three of them sat in front of me and they started having a discussion. And I just sat back with my jaw on the floor and just listened because my level of contribution would be almost nothing.
Yeah.
It was because they were so clear on their why. They were so passionate about why they were in this world that I was in awe. Forget about all the stuff that they've done that's amazing by itself, but it's exactly what you just said. I think success comes when you know why you're doing it. And I was sitting in front of like three of the most quote unquote successful people in the world, and they were crystal clear on exactly why they woke up every morning, and they couldn't wake up, they couldn't wait to wake up the next morning to do exactly what they were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because honestly, once you get a business going, you need other people to help you because you can't do it all yourself. But unless you have that vision of your why, you won't be able to pass it on and get others jazzed up about wanting to work with you and help build your company.
Exactly. I'm still trying to figure out all of that, but I saw it in action. So exactly, I'm like, I can definitely, I saw that it worked with them. I'll figure out the how of the why later, right? Is kind of the thing. How to figure out your why is a different thing.
Well, you're doing a great job because you had a great product and then you realize, boom, here's this opportunity. There's this catastrophe that happens, but you pivoted, you found a way, and actually it worked better for your customers than the way you were originally doing it, and a lower cost for you overhead. Now we come to the year 2020 where the whole world is hit with the COVID pandemic. How did that affect your business and what new lessons did you learn?
Actually, this is another spin. So two things happened. First off, we're one of the lucky ones. I'm in online education, online language education. Our business exploded about 100% within 60 days of COVID hitting. Everybody's stuck at home. I should learn Spanish, German, Chinese, right?
Yeah.
And I can't go to or I used to go to the community college to take these lessons. I can't anymore. I want to keep my level up. So our business exploded. What happened there in our pivot from that wasn't actually a new product. The new product that I have is called podcasttalk.com. So the story behind that was when swine flu happened, our business started doing well. We generally market online, search engine optimization, Facebook ads, Google. Those are kind of our channels for bringing in customers. I was looking for a new channel, right? So I wanted to get in front of new audiences that wouldn't find us in these ways. So I decided, hey, why don't I do some podcasting? I'd been on 10 or 20 podcasts in the past, but just people I met when I speak at conferences. It wasn't any kind of effort on my part to kind of reach out and find podcasters.
Yeah.
So I sat down that afternoon and I was sitting there. I'm like, okay, I need to get in front of new people. Everybody's stuck at home listening to podcasts. Let me find some podcasts to be guests on. So like anybody who's done that, you go on Google and you type in, podcast interview guests or whatever the words are for that. And yeah, that doesn't work. For anybody who's tried it, I can tell you that absolutely doesn't work. Half the podcasts aren't active anymore. You might get Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss and some, the NPR ones. And they're not accepting me on those shows anytime soon, right? So, it wasn't really useful. So I reached out to agencies to try to see if I could, if they could get me booked on podcasts, and they were charging $3,000 to $5,000, right, a month. And I was sitting back, I'm not going to pay. Can they guarantee anybody listens to the podcast? They're like, no. Mm-mm. So, theoretically, I could have been on a show of some guy who's in his parents' basement, right, who's just recording, and I just paid $1,000 to get on that show. So I decided, using my computer engineering background again, can I get all the podcasts in the world into a database? And I spent a weekend, and I'm like, oh, that's physically possible. I didn't finish in a weekend. It took me about a year to do it. But, I'm like, it's possible. Can I get their contact information? Yes, it's possible. And then I built a system, which is Podcast Talk. I built the minimum viable product, the MVP. I have a programming team right now, which pretty much allows you to search all the podcasts in the world. So Christina, let's say you want to get on marketing podcasts. So you can say, Give me all the podcasts in the world that have the word marketing in the description, have at least 52 episodes, have at least a 4.5 star, and have released an episode in the last 2 weeks. And the guest name is Jane. The host name is Jane. I mean, we just have random stuff you can throw in there that you can do it. Hit search in milliseconds. It will give you back every podcast in the world that meet those criteria. Then you can pick the ones you want, and we help you send emails and pitch them and do follow-ups and all of that for them as well. So that came out of a need that came out during the pandemic. So I was looking for an opportunity. There was something that, I had a need that nobody was meeting, and I decided to build it myself instead of just throwing my hands up in the air and say, oh, well, that's too bad. I went and made it. I went and built it myself.
Yeah. And that's a great story, because so many businesses got started that way. There was something a person needed. It's not out there. Well, heck, I'll build it for myself, and end up serving millions of people. So how does it work? They come there and you help them track down the podcast, but then you help them pitch it. What does it look like when they come?
Absolutely. Great question. So you find all the podcasts you want. The way that our system works is you pay, it's a monthly subscription. You pay for the number of pitches you want to do every month, 25, 50, and 100. The story is I actually started with 100, 250, and 500, but our system works so well, getting about 10 to 20% response, that the first batch of beta users we had were just getting so many podcasts that they were telling us to stop because they couldn't get on this many shows. So we've reduced the numbers there. To 25, you'll get on a show every week, maybe a show every 2 weeks. There are a lot of people starting off want to be at the kind of mid-tier. You'll probably be on one show every week. The high level, we're talking 2 or 3 shows a week, usually for authors who are publishing a book and they want to kind of go out at that pace. So what happens is you go in there and do the search that I described earlier. You find all the podcasts. We even have we've created something called a podcast score from 0 to 100. So it actually tells you not only what the likelihood of this podcast having listeners is, which is not public data. You can't tell how much, anybody who tells you they know are lying unless they happen to be the host of the podcast. Only the host knows. This is not data that anybody else can get a hold of, right? But we actually give you an idea of whether somebody's listening to this podcast, which also correlates to how likely it is or how hard it is to get on the podcast.
So how did you figure that out? Was it, how did you come with figuring that algorithm?
I spent about 2 or 3 days playing around with different formulas and then kind of spot checking it. And then we changed it based on the reply rate of the podcast. And we're still playing with it now. So, when we're recording this now in November, if somebody's listening to this a year from now, the algorithm probably will have developed. We have actually machine learning and artificial intelligence at the back end that's just constantly kind of fine tuning that. So we're in the version 0.0. Officially, we launch in January, even though we've been open for about a year. We have about 200 users. We're officially launching in January because we'll have, everything's kind of finished. We should be out of beta by then. So what it does there is so what you can do is you do the search and you can pick, let's just say in marketing, and you find 500 shows that you want to be on.
Whoa.
Just as an example, right? We won't pitch them all at once. We're not a spam system that's going to send out 5 emails for you all at once. What we do is we create campaigns, and we have a system where you can we have templates for you, but you can customize email number 1, email a 3-day follow-up if they don't answer, a 7-day follow-up if they don't answer, and a 14-day follow-up if they don't answer at the end. And you can kind of put it all in there. You can customize it per podcast if you want, or they can begin a generic one for everything else. We recommend for podcast score. So the higher level ones, if you're pitching Joe Rogan, customize the pitch. And we have a wizard for you to do that. It has all the podcasts on the left, all the links to their social media, Facebook, all on the top, the description. So you don't actually even have to leave our system to listen to the episodes, to open up their website, to kind of get some more personal information of the person you're pitching and customize the email right in our system. You do all of that, you hit save, and depending on your plan, we'll pitch 25, 50, or 100 a month and staggered over a few days. So it'll be, 1 email a day, 2 emails a day, or 3 emails a day, more or less, based on the way the system works. And it's autopilot. So if you put 500 in there and you're our lowest plan, you really don't actually have to log into our system for about 2 more years, because we will pitch 25 podcasts a month for you. And as soon as they reply in your inbox, it'll say, Christina, I'd love to have you on my show. To get forwarded into your inbox. And from then you take it from there. Calendly link, fill out forms, all the rest of it. So we get you booked on podcasts on autopilot.
This is amazing. Because you are so right. I have talked to so many people that have said, in fact, I talked to one this past summer that said, I can pitch you to 6 places, and it was about $1,500. I'm thinking, whoa. See, I've been a producer now for 10 years. So I've gone, and now I've gotten to a place where I worked with a number of PR agencies that know me and just come to me and send me wonderful photos. I get about 60 submissions a day. It's intense. It's a lot of things to look at. But what I like about this is you do all the background work, and then if they're interested, it shoots to your email, and you're not having to get all this over inundating, which is hard when you're a business owner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's, our mission is to connect great guests with great podcasters. So not everybody is, is lucky to have 60 people pitching, like you, Chris. A lot of people starting off, and I speak for myself. I've had my own podcast. And once you use your own personal network, you can get maybe about 30 shows, 40 shows. Then
Yeah.
you run out of friends to have on your show. And eventually you have to actually go out and start looking for guests. It's a lot of work. The irony is there are amazing guests out there trying to find you too. Right? It's just there's no way for those two things to get connected. There's some things out there right now that are like dating sites where you put up your profile and the other person puts up theirs. But maybe they have 5,000 podcasts on there and 5,000 guests. That is a drop in the bucket. There are 2 million podcasts in the world, about 600 or 700,000 active ones.
Yeah.
If you're only looking at the 5,000, you're missing 99% of the podcasts that are for you. There's some niches. For example, when I onboarded the first 100 customers at Podcast Talk, and one of the ladies I onboarded was a burlesque dancer who used burlesque dancing to increase women's self-esteem.
Oh.
I guarantee you're not going to find very many podcasts, burlesque podcasts on, most of the systems. I went in there, I was kind of hesitant as I was walking her through. I don't know if there are any burlesque podcasts. I've never done that search before. Over 250. There are tons of them. But, our system has them and she was able to do it. She was successful on getting on almost all of them and really takes up her credibility right now because she's been on almost every burlesque podcast in the world. So you can just kind of say that, hey, look at me. I've been everywhere. You've heard me on multiple different shows. But that's a very small niche. Marketing, again, you could be pitching those for the rest of your life and you would probably never run out of podcasts to go on.
Now, what is the price range more or less from what to what? Like, you don't need to give all the prices, but like, what is the range?
I'm happy to. So another thing about me is I specialize in bootstrapping businesses. So I do not have like VC money if somebody gives me $5 million. What does that mean? That means I don't have to charge an arm and a leg for my things because I'm not paying back some rich person in San Francisco a lot of money. $39 to $79 a month is where we are right now. We might go up to $49 to $89 a month. But for 40, right now, when we're recording this for $39 a month, you can get on essentially a podcast a week, maybe a podcast every 2 weeks. So it's about $15 per show. So what would that do for your business? What would that do for your personal brand? What would that do for you? There's all these things that come out there for about $15, less than an Uber Eats, something you get at Uber Eats, right? So
well, Ray, this is amazing because I just launched a book during the pandemic, and I just was so into dealing with my clients, working remote with my clients. I totally just put my book aside, didn't promote it, and I think we're going to be having a little chat.
Authors are actually probably some of the more common people we have on there, especially people who either self-publish. I mean, if you're a New York Times bestseller and you have HarperCollins who is going to promote you all around the web, you might not need us. No. But for most of us authors, I'm writing a book as well. Yeah, we're not going to get a $2 million book deal. So we need to do our own promotion, and we're happy to help. That's what we're here for. We're kind of here to help people connect and get their message out to the world.
Well, you've launched 3 amazing businesses, but I am so grateful that you started this newest one. I know it's going to help a lot of business owners wanting to get their credibility out there, build also their network, and also possibly their clients and leads. And so this is great. Where can they find out more about Live Lingua and also your newest business, the podcast business? How can they find out more about that?
Of course, sure. So you can just go to Google. Well, you can Google Spanish tutors online, and Live Lingua should come up in the top 3. But LiveLingua.com. We teach 11 most spoken languages in the world, all with live tutors. So it'll be a native Chinese speaker if you want to learn Chinese. It'll be a native Spanish speaker if you want to learn Spanish. They all speak English. If you're at the lower level, we have some more advanced teachers that only speak the language, but we'll place you with the right one when you kind of go in there. And we have a free learning style quiz too. So if you're not really sure what the best way for you to learn a language is, just go in there and just take our quiz. So it'll be livelingua.com/quiz, totally free. And it'll tell you the ideal learning style for you, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and based on your Jungian personality type. So we've worked with somebody to do that. So that's a lot of fun. Otherwise, for the podcast, you can go to podcasthawk.com, the animal, HAWK. As I mentioned, Christina, I don't spend too long thinking my business name. So I said podcast and then an animal, and I looked up 20 domains. I'm like, hey, Hawk is available. And there you go. So it's podcasthawk.com. We are still in beta until January 2022, which means you get a really low price right now and you lock it in for life. And then in January 2022, you just get a kind of low price. We might go up like $5 or something like that. But it's not going to be much. Again, I don't have to pay back millions. I just want to help a lot of people. And that's why we're launching.
And you are going to help a lot of people, and you have been. Thank you so much, Ray. I really, really am blessed that you came to join us today on Savvy Broadcasting. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Christina. It was a blast.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.